We have a lot of people not here. So should we say everybody come on in? Yeah, I would say everybody come on in.
Good morning. It is 8:30, so we're going to begin. If anyone's out in the hall, you might want to scoot in and join us. This is our final day, and it is full of deep learning that you can apply to your professional development sessions as well as your own teaching. We're going to begin this morning and ask Annie to give us the results of the fundraising efforts.
Hello everyone. I am very pleased to announce we have $1,600. And that includes the $500 match and the paintings, and also all the other donations contribute to the $1,600. So my mission to you is, as you leave the door and you go out, give your $5, give your $10 as you walk out, so we can reach that $2,000. So we have two solid $1,000 to give to 2 teacher leaders to attend the RRCNA National Conference. So please, every dollar counts at this point. So, but go ahead and when you leave out, remember just $5, a couple dollars, what it change, it's all fine. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for all that you've done, and I appreciate all of your generosity. Thank you so much. Yes?
Do you want us to give it to you, or do you want us to give it to the table?
You can give it to the table. It might be easier because they will, if you want to make a notation, they'll put it as your donation, and it's tax. Remember, it's tax deductible. So thank you very much once again, and it's been a pleasure to see you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Annie. We're going to begin today with an IDEC update from Jeff Reimer-Bashore, and he's joined by Marianne Doyle this morning. Jeff?
All right. So, thank you. So I'm gonna turn it over to Marianne real quick, and Marianne's gonna talk about our piloting the new hearing and recording sounds and words. We're gonna flip over slides here, and then we will get into our IDEC update. Just so you know, we're recording for YouTube Live, so don't say anything unfortunate, okay? All right.
No booing or hissing. Good morning, everyone. You have received, when you came in, or perhaps you downloaded it before you came, a handout entitled Piloting the New Hearing, Recording, Sounds, and Words Task. So I'd like to give you a little bit of background about that and review some of the procedures that we need to follow this year. So, to begin with, an observation survey of early literacy achievement new edition, the 4th edition, is now under construction and is expected to be completed in 2019, and by that I mean published in 2019. The Mari Clay Literacy Trust is the entity responsible for the republication of all of Mari Clay's work. So they've decided that this is the best time, the right year to republish that observation survey. To prepare for that, they engaged the New Zealand Council of Educational Research to do new norming in New Zealand so that this new edition will have new norms for the New Zealand kids. And while they were engaged in this work, they decided it was time to try and develop a new hearing and recording sounds and words task. So this council, the New Zealand Council of Educational Research, in terms of the new hearing and recording sounds and words task, has developed and piloted new forms, and then they normed the new task as they normed the entire observation survey for New Zealand. The goal in creating a new hearing, recording sounds and words task was to reduce the ceiling effect that I think we are all familiar with and have seen. The result of their work is 5 new forms, and each is worth 50 raw score points. So now when the 4th edition comes out in this year, 2019, there will be new norms for the New Zealand children, a new hearing and recording sounds and words task, 5 different forms. The existing hearing and recording sounds and words task that you and I use, that will be in the appendix. The norms for our children, the norms for U.S. children, that are in the current text, the 2013 3rd edition, will also be there. So really the 2019 edition has not been updated for us at this time because we cannot switch to the new task yet, and the new norms, there are not new norms there for us at this point. So that means we have work to do in the 2019-2020 year, our next academic year. Our work is, number 1, to re-norm the OS, and Jeff will probably talk a little bit about that. It's not something that you need to worry a whole lot about. It happens at IDEC. But we also need to study this new hearing and recording sounds and words task. We want to pilot these new forms so that we can validate the equivalence of them with our children. We want to resolve any questions that come up about using them with our children, and we want to confirm on the basis of data their appropriateness for our use. Following the next academic year, following 2019-2020, new norms for our children will be available and published on the IDEC website for immediate use. A reprinting of the 4th edition will include the new U.S. norms, but I can't tell you when that reprinting will occur, because usually a reprinting happens when the first printing gets very low and the publishers call for it. So I'm not sure when that'll happen, but we will keep you informed. We will also, after next year, at the end of next year, have data to inform our evaluation of the new hearing and recording sounds and words task, and we will inform you of any decisions of what's going to happen next with them. So what I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on, and I don't have a lot of time, and Jeff will be helping by reinforcing some of these points, I'd like to focus in on the procedures so we're all clear of what we have to get done next year. And these procedures are found on page 6 of your handout. So teachers involved, the reading recovery teachers involved, are those in our IDEC assigned random sample schools. So those teachers who are involved in testing those children labeled tested, not instructed, they don't have to worry about this. And teachers in training will be included. The teachers that have the random sample children will conduct the usual random sample testing with the 3rd edition, with the existing test, 3 times a year per usual, the beginning, mid-year, and end of year. At the same time, beginning, middle, and end of year, the teachers will test the random sample students with the new hearing and recording sounds and words task. How will they know what form they have or what students, or what they're supposed to do? IDEC will assign one new form, and there are 5, A, B, C, D, E. I'll show you those in a moment. IDEC will assign one form to each random sample teacher. That teacher is to use only that form at each testing time. So if the teacher is assigned Form C, she will use Form C at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, at the end of the year. And this assignment will be found on the IDEC website. And we also ask that the teachers use that new form with random sample students only. So yes, the random sample students will complete 2 hearing recording sounds in words tasks, the current form and the new form. The data entry at the beginning, middle, and end of year will include the raw scores for both forms. And we're also asking that the teachers doing this testing of the random sample children submit their scored observation survey sheet to you, the teacher leader, and teacher leaders will send the packet to IDEC. Jeff will give you more information about that. Please send them at the 3 different times, and that's so that our research team can review them, and we don't want to wait to the end of the year to get 2,000 times 3. We want to get them at those 3 different times, and we're going to be looking at them across the year. So the new forms, I'm going to read these to you. Form A, my puppy likes it when I scratch her tummy. Sometimes she growls at my friends. Form B, at the supermarket we bought bread, milk, tea, shampoo, and strawberry ice cream. Form C, I made popcorn in a big pot. It was crunchy and sweet and tasted delicious. Form D, for my lunch, I have a crunchy apple, a slice of bread, 2 carrots, and a piece of cheese. Form E, my baby sister likes playing in the bath. She splashes and makes the floor wet. So just a little bit about directions for scoring. You have the handout, and I'm only going to touch on this briefly because we don't have time to go through it. But the piloting handout, the directions that you're holding onto, will be available for you and the teachers on the IDEC website starting in July. The assignment of form will be done by Jeff, and when he's done making the assignments, that will be there for the teachers to see as well, and he'll mention where that's going to be. Then the scoring parallels what we have been doing, what we're used to doing, those processes from Clay's current book, pages 119 to 121. So, but on the handout, the conventions for scoring and some examples with these new words from these new sentences and some caveats about scoring are found. Just to highlight from Clay's observation survey, remember we want teachers to follow the standards carefully because that ensures reliability and validity of our testing. Following Clay's recommendation, we want to remind the teachers to be conservative rather than liberal in their scoring and consult the guidelines and examples in the handout. Then count and record the number of correct phonemes between 1 and 50 raw score points. That's all very familiar. This is familiar too, how to handle additions and omissions, how to handle it when the child writes down the word in a different letter order, what to do about capital letters, what to do about reversed letters, how to count repeated words in a form or sentence. Just a couple of points about scoring. 1 point is given for ER and AR, as in the word supermarket. When a vowel digraph makes one phoneme, as in T, the EA gets 1 point. But 2 letters are needed in words like the TH gets 1 point. It has to have TH to get 1 point. And NG in playing, you have to have the N and the G to get 1 point. Just pointing that out. Now here's a unique thing. To get to 50 points in Form A, you count H, E, and R. And this particular word here is worth 3 points, and that was just to make sure we had 50 points for Form A. Floor gets 4 points. Apple with a schwa sound at the end gets 4 points. This is all in your handout. I just wanted to point it out so you can maybe point it out to your teachers and talk about it with them. So teacher leaders, we are so thankful for your help and attention this morning. Thank you for confirming with the teachers that they have what they need off the IDEC website, that they know when to do their testing and what to do with their forms when they're done. Thank you for answering their questions, then for collecting the observation sheets for the new form and sending those packets to IDEC per Jeff's instructions. So that's what I had to share with you this morning about 4th edition and how we're going to complete these tasks so that we will be part of the reprint of the 4th edition.
Thank you, Mary Ann. All right. I'm hearing discussion out there already. So, no, that's good. All right, I'm going to switch things over here real quick. Get to another set of slides, and we will start the IDEC update. Start my timer. Okay, there we go. Good morning, everybody. So good to see everybody. It's a Friday morning, right? We're at Friday. I think we're at Friday. I don't know about you, but it has felt like a particularly invigorating week here at TLI. I feel like that week, I've been hearing lots of good comments. I feel like when we've been working at the data table, we've been, sorry for the salty language, kicking ass and taking names over there. So, man, but no, it's been good. So here's today's agenda. I'm going to start off with a few brief reminders from Julie. I'm going to talk about some changes for the 2019-20 or 1920 school year, including the hearing and recording sounds and words pilot. Do a brief sort of like a review of how 2018-19 went, or some things that that have happened in IDEC, and then we're going to move into the data section, and we're actually broadcasting live on YouTube right now for anyone who's not here. So hello, I'm going to wave to the camera real quick. Hello, everybody. And then we're going to talk some data, and we're going to do a little special episode of I Love Data Fridays right here, because it is Friday, right? It would be awkward if it wasn't Friday and I started doing that. So, and we're just going to look at some data. So I'm going to get through all of the. All right, I'm going to get all through the boring stuff first, and then we'll get to the data. So no, it's not boring. The important stuff, but we're going to get to the fun data at the end there. So just a reminder, data submission deadline for this year is July 25th at 4 p.m. If you're having issues, please don't wait till the last minute. Call. There is no judgment at the IDEC help desk. Okay, we love you all. All right. And just a reminder that as we send out, we tend to send a lot of our communications out via our IDEC newsletter. Especially with the reminders about the deadlines or instructions with the hearing and recording sounds and words. So, just double check junk mail settings or update. If you need to update your email address, get that updated on the IDEC website so you can stay informed about what is happening. So, I guess before I get into it, I also want to say thank you to all of you out in the audience there, teacher leaders and trainers, for all that you do on our behalf, chasing down that data, willingly participating in research projects, and this year I feel like I've particularly been leaning on a lot of people in the audience here for help and guidance and suggestions, collaborating with IDEC, participating in I Love Data Fridays, and the 7 billion other things that you guys do on our behalf. So thank you very much for all your help and all your hard work. There would be no data without you guys. So thank you very much. All right, so 2019-20 school year, just reminders, fees for next year is the teacher data fee is $70 per teacher and $400 per site. And let's get right into talking about the piloting, the hearing and recording sounds and words. So, as Mary Ann said, this only applies to random sample students only. So those schools who are assigned to do random sample student data collection will only be participating in piloting the hearing, recording sounds and words. The tested, not instructed schools don't have to worry about it. So you will administer the new hearing, recording sounds and words at fall, mid-year, and year-end. Every time you administer the current OS, you will administer the new hearing and recording sounds and words. Each school will be assigned a sentence or form, and I will show you how we know which schools are what in a minute here. You use the same sentence throughout the year. So as Mary Ann said, if a school gets assigned to sentence A, it is used, that the teachers at that school use sentence A at fall, mid-year, and year-end. And you continue to administer the current hearing and recording sounds and words. So you will see 2 additional questions on the IDEC website this year at fall, mid-year, and year-end. One is simply asking what was the child's score on the new hearing and recording sounds and words. And then a second question, just to actually double check which form the teachers actually used, just in case they decided to switch forms. It will just simply ask them which form did they use. We know what happens. They may have a favorite sentence, I don't know. But so now, how do I know which form to use? So the website is going to tell you which form to use, and you will find it on the data entry screen where you enter your students. You click on the View School Lists button, and you get that page that lists out your school. And if you see on the left-hand column, those are the random sample schools. It will just put the form right next to the random sample school name. This will be both visible to you and your teachers. So they can, you can give them these instructions, they will ignore it, and then you can go back and tell them which one that they, I know how it works. So, I'm also having one of our web engineers work on the letters A, B, C, and D, that if the teacher actually clicks on the A, B, C, or D, it'll download the form that they can print off and use. So, yeah, so. Which they will ignore, and you will have to email to them anyway. So, all that hard work. But so that's how they will know, and you can get access to the form. We will also place copies on our public website so they can be available on the public website. We will include instructions on where to find it in later communications. So as Mary Ann said, we will be collecting the forms. So we will collect them at the 3 different points in the year. Right now what we think the procedure will be is we would prefer to have the teachers get the forms to you, and then you send the forms to us at times. And like we said, the purpose is just so our trainers can look through the forms and check for consistency in the scoring, and also look for any how it's working with our kids and everything. So Jeff, what's the exact procedure? I don't know yet, so just stay tuned. We'll let you know and everything. I think the first collection of forms will happen sometime October, November, after the beginning of the school year settles down a little bit, and you have a chance to sort of calmly collect all of that stuff. Okay, now. Why was there laughter out there? Okay. Okay, so another change we're going to do to the website. We're going to make just a small change to the gender question on the website. It's going to, instead of saying, what is the child's gender, we're going to ask, according to the school record, what is the child's gender? And we've added a 3rd option of other. This, I want to just emphasize specifically, just have teachers go to the school record. This is not an attempt to start an opportunity for teachers to have a discussion about a child's gender identity. It's just go to the school record, and if the school record lists something other than male and female, you just put other on there. And then that's just how the gender is going to go. So we're trying to, sort of acknowledge the change in some of the culture, right now with around gender identity issues. Okay, I want to quickly talk about the I3 follow-up study that's been going on, and many of you have been participating in, and then I have a video to play with some more information. So just a brief overview of what's happening in this study. So the study has been going back to I3 schools that were specifically tested, not instructed schools during the I3 time. And we have been collecting data, and we've been partnered with the University of Delaware. And this follow-up data has been, we've been collecting follow-up data on school curriculums in these schools and third and fourth grade assessments of reading recovery and TLI students as in their schools. We've so far have collected data on 4 cohorts of students. So all 4 years of the I3 GAMP we've gone through and collected. Well, I made it sound like I've collected. You guys have collected, so thank you for doing that. One of the issues, our major issue, has been attrition. Children move, schools have dropped from reading recovery, and some of these data, especially when we've started back in the, when talking about kids who were served in the 11-12 school year, they were, I can't remember, but they are probably now in 7th and 8th grade, and how many times have data systems changed from that point and everything. So all of these things have kind of added up to a lot of data attrition. And the other thing is, I mean, you saw how I could barely remember this was Friday. How many of us can remember the curriculums that were used back in 1st grade, back in 2nd grade and 3rd grade, 5, 6, 7 years ago? So the study, so the researchers at the University of Pennsylvania want to attempt to do one more cohort, and cohort for students who were served in reading recovery in the 16-17 school year. So these would be the most recent reading recovery students with 3rd grade data available starting in the fall or sometime next year that we could have entered on the website. And hopefully the knowledge of curriculum is a little more fresh in our brains as well. In an effort to try to avoid I want you to know, I hear you guys when you say there's some research burnout out there, and I hear you. So one of the things we're going to be trying to do is actually target non-I3 schools, and I know that actually as far as teacher leaders go, you all both have I3 and non-I3 schools, and there's not a lot of overlap. But in cases where you actually have your teachers going out and collecting the data for this, we hope to avoid, lessen some of the data burnout that's been going on. One thing that I'll point out with this cohort, we won't be collecting 4th grade data, so there'll be half the amount of data that we'll be collecting. In case you've not been familiar with the I3 study, there's a $75 incentive for teachers to participate. I believe it comes in the form of an Amazon gift card. So, I've heard a few teacher leaders who collected data on a few schools and have racked up a few extra Amazon cards. Easy way to get some Christmas money there, I think. So we will be contacting teacher leaders with tested, not instructed schools in about late October. The researchers have some specific criteria that schools have to meet. You have to have enough reading recovery kids and TNI kids to get to participate in the study, and we're sending them that data, and they're figuring it all out. So we'll be contacting you. If you've never participated in the study before, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to know how it's going to go, don't worry. The study, the folks at the University of Delaware and myself were well practiced at doing some informational webinars. We do them like those little I Love Data Friday special episodes, and you can ask questions and watch the webinar, and it gets recorded and you can show it to your teachers later. And so I'm going to quickly switch over to a video here. This video is from Dr. Henry May, who is the principal investigator. You might remember his name from the I3 grant. He was also the principal investigator on the I3 grant, and he is leading this this charge here at the University of Delaware. Let me flip screens, and I'm going to hit the play button. He wants to tell you why it's important. I'm going to play. We're going to watch a video, and I'm not going to tell you why. He wants to give you some information on why it's important to participate, and also the intended benefits of this study, which I think you will find interesting.
Hi, everybody. My name is Henry May, and I've been doing research on the impact of reading recovery for almost a decade. I'm here today to tell you more about our IES-funded study of the long-term impacts of reading recovery. So what's this study about? Well, first and foremost, it's intended to address some common criticisms in reading recovery. First, we're hoping to produce rigorous evidence of the impacts of reading recovery beyond first grade. Second, we're hoping to identify the school-level policies and practices that maximize long-term effects. And third, we're hoping to document the costs of reading recovery compared to the costs of other approaches to intervention. In other words, are the costs of reading recovery in first grade justified because less intervention is needed in grades? So who's included in this study? Schools and students who participated in the tested, not instructed study. So when I3 was originally conceptualized, there was the idea that we needed to conduct two parallel impact studies. The first was a randomized controlled trial designed to meet clearinghouse standards, but the problem was because the students who were in the control condition ended up receiving reading recovery in the second half of the school year, we weren't able to track long-term outcomes for those students involved in the randomized experiment. To estimate the long-term effects of reading recovery, we implemented what was called the tested, not instructed study. And the design of that study mirrored very closely the natural process by which reading recovery students are identified and selected for intervention. Kids are tested with the OS at the beginning of first grade, and then, based on their scores, students with the lowest scores are selected to receive reading recovery. Well, it turns out that that's very similar to a research design called regression discontinuity. And so by leveraging that sort of design, it required only that the reading recovery schools in that tested, not instructed study, the only thing they had to do differently was to continue to collect outcomes data, the OS scores and test scores later on, for the students who were tested at the beginning of the year or in mid-year, but whose OS scores were not quite low enough for them to be selected for reading recovery. So this includes all I3 schools and also a subsample of non-I3 schools from the 2016-17 school year. The students in these schools who were selected for RR based on low OS scores. And in addition, the tested not instructed students. So these are the students in the tested not instructed schools who were tested with the OS during the beginning or middle of the school year, and for whom mid-year and end-of-year OS scores were also collected, but these TNI students never received reading recovery intervention. Okay, so what makes this study so important? Well, first and foremost, it uses a rigorous research design that's going to stand up to reading recovery's critics. The regression discontinuity design is recognized by Workforce Clearinghouse and IES as a preferred design for rigorous impact evaluations. It's second only to a randomized experiment. This particular study of reading recovery includes hundreds of schools and thousands of students across the country. The sample's enormous. Also, our study is designed to document the cost of intervention for all our students and also for the comparison group students, the tested not instructed students, in grades 1 through 4. So we'll be able to say something about the intervention that reading recovery students received in second, third, and fourth grade and compare that to the interventions that were delivered to comparison group students in first through fourth grade. So what's a regression discontinuity design? Basically, it's a cutoff-based design. Instead of a random assignment experiment in which you're randomly assigning students to treatment and control groups, the cutoff-based mechanism allows you to choose a cut score on a pretest, in our case, the observation survey, And students below that cut score receive the intervention, while students above the cut score do not. What happens during the analytic phase, after you've collected post-test outcomes data, a regression model is used to regress post-test scores on pre-test scores, with a cut point that clearly differentiates those that received and those that did not receive intervention. In this graphic, you can see the cut point and how the dots in the scatter plot above the cut point, those represent students that did not get reading recovery, and the dots below the cut point on the pretest, those are students that did receive reading recovery. Well, when we plot a regression line through this, based on the comparison group, you'll see that that regression line does not go through the middle of the data for those students who received reading recovery. Their regression line is actually a bit higher. It's this distance between the predicted scores for students in reading recovery and the actual scores that they achieved that serve as the estimated impact of reading recovery. In other words, it's a model to determine the degree to which students that received reading recovery intervention scored above where their predicted scores would have fallen in the absence of an intervention. In other words, had they not gotten reading recovery. This is an actual scatter plot from one of the I3 cohorts. And here you can see there's clearly a positive impact of reading recovery on the performance of students who had the lowest OS scores at the beginning of first grade. Specifically, those students that are below that 0.0 cut point and receive reading recovery. Their regression line is shifted upwards compared to the regression line on the right side of the graphic for comparison group students that never received reading recovery. When looking at the short-term impacts of reading recovery on the OS, you'll see that the effects are large and positive across the original RCT experiment in I3, also within the regression discontinuity design under I3, and also for a lot of schools that are non-I3 schools but also participated in the tested not instructed group. So what we're hoping to do is leverage additional data for those schools and follow the long-term outcomes for reading recovery students in comparison to the students that never received reading recovery. So in RCT, you'll see that the first grade impacts are quite large and similarly large but more variable in the I3 regression discontinuity. And then in the non-I3 regression discontinuity design, they're less variable and even closer to the impact estimates from the original RCT. Okay, so what about long-term effects? If that last graphic showed you the short-term effects in the middle of first grade, we need to understand the long-term effects in order to deal with criticisms that reading recovery as a first-grade intervention, that those effects may not be sustained. So we've been partnering for 1.5 years with teachers and teacher leaders across the country, working with the original I3 schools to collect 3rd and 4th grade state test scores in reading and English language arts. In addition to that, we're also collecting data on participation in interventions during the 1st through 4th grades. But getting historical data on students from the I3 cohorts 4 to 8 years ago has proven difficult. A lot of I3 schools have dropped reading recovery, and inevitably students switch schools. For 3 of our 4 cohorts, when we were collecting data, those students have already matriculated out of their elementary schools and into middle grades. Unfortunately, our data coverage for the 4 I3 cohorts thus far is not particularly good. It's only about 18% to 28%. So what can we do to strengthen the evidence? Well, we've decided to add a more recent tested not instructed cohort. We hope to add about 500 non-I3 TLI schools that were in that group during the 2016-17 school year. So the students who were in 1st grade during the 2016-17 school year would now be in 3rd grade. They'd be taking the state test in ELA in 3rd grade right about now. Most of those RR schools are still implementing reading recovery. And the data from those 3rd grade tests will become available this summer or fall. So we won't have nearly the lag that we had with the I3 cohorts. Gathering information about intervention participation should also be easier and more accurate. So when will the final data collection happen? We're planning to begin this data collection in September and run it through December of 2019.
We'll work on it in September, start maybe something in October.
We've got a number of videos, webinars, that document the process for collecting these data, and those webinars will be distributed in the fall and updated for the new cohort of TLI schools. Now, as before, we'll be giving a $75 gift card to each individual, typically a reading recovery teacher or a teacher leader, who submits both the test and survey data for a school. Those who collect and submit data from more than one school will receive a gift card for each school completed. So for example, if a teacher or teacher leader submits data for 3 schools, that would equal $225 in Amazon gift cards. So to sum this up, we've got a really strong research study in the works. It has the potential to directly address the most persistent criticisms of reading recovery, but collecting data thus far across cohorts from many years ago has proven difficult. So we need the help of a new group of teachers and teacher leaders to collect data from the most recent cohort, tested non-instructed schools and students. Success here, in terms of high rates of data coverage, will provide rigorous evidence of the long-term impacts and cost-effectiveness of reading recovery. I hope that you agree with me that this study is a really important contribution to the evidence of the effectiveness of reading recovery, and that you'll encourage those involved in reading recovery and the tested non-instructed schools within which we'll be collecting data this fall to help support the data collection effort. Thank you so much for your time.
So I'll quickly sort of add just a little comments. I will talk to Henry about the September date there. October, a little later, might be more realistic. I hope you noticed one thing about, so it is important. It is important. We are trying to get as much participation and as much data, and I know this is a huge challenge. I really acknowledge that. And I want you to know that I think it comes through in the video with Henry. You know, Henry has a very good foundational knowledge of reading recovery, how the intervention works and everything. And that, you know, he is all about the strong evidence for reading recovery. And so he and his team will work their hardest to give us the strongest evidence and results that we can. You know, what I really love is, you know, he's a bit of a data nerd. But I love that Henry, you know, takes the time to, not that I could go and run a regression discontinuity analysis like just from what he showed, but I love that he takes the time to explain it, and that, you know, what he says, you know, you're like, I get it, okay, this is why we're doing it. So they are on our side, so whatever you do to help encourage that participation would be greatly appreciated. All right. We're going to go, okay, I was going to say we're going to get to the fun stuff, but we're going to talk about a year in review real quick. I'm just going to talk briefly about some things that happened in 2018-19. I'm actually just going to focus on I Love Data Fridays. So this year we did 11 episodes of I Love Data Fridays. One of the things that we added were some new mini episodes where if we had some short topics, we'd just get in there and talk a little bit and then move on with our days. But the big thing we added this year was a new section that's called How Do You Do Data? And this is an attempt to talk to teacher leaders and people about how they're actually using their data to advocate, to make decisions, to solve problems out in the world. And so we did 3 interviews this year. The first one was with Amy Smith and Beth Moxie from Kentucky. And theirs was about an hour-long interview that, you know, really sort of detailed sort of a multi-year epic saga of, like, you know, troubleshooting some, you know, what looked like, you know, they had good discontinuing rates, but they weren't happy with the outcomes on text reading level, and, you know, some high numbers of incompletes, and like how they use some of the on-demand reports, how they use research, how they've developed some of their own weekly data collection forms, and just sort of journey through the process which included, failures and successes and what they have learned along the way. The second one was with Scott Mackin in Wisconsin, and Scott shared with me some sample charts that he uses when he goes and talks to administrators. Some of the charts were just charts that IDEC does that he's adapted for his own purpose, which is awesome. And then another one of his charts was something that he's come up on his own. And the way he's designed the charts is that he has templates now, and he can then use these templates to prepare for school visits, for district visits, and have them ready to go. And these templates are available up on the IDEC website on our public website for you to use. And then our final one this year is with Heather Garland, also from Kentucky. We talked about making reading recovery indispensable in your school district. At the Carnegie Foundation, we sort of had, which is this improvement science work about making reading recovery a part of the tree trunk and not just a limb. And in this interview, Heather sort of talks about some of the professional development that she's done with her teachers and how the teachers how she's pushed them to, in ways to get them, they're in reading recovery, but then get them out and get them into leadership positions in the school. So once again, sort of a multi-year process of how all of this happens. So I encourage you to on those drives from place to place during the school year to just pop on I Love Data Fridays. All right, now we're going to get to the fun part. All right, so now I got to cue up some music here real quick. I'm going to switch screens. I'm going to do my sound, guys, just so you, okay, all right. Teamwork over here, all right. All right here. Hey, data lovers, and welcome to another episode of I Love Data Fridays. Here in Greenville, South Carolina, located just on the outskirts of Clemson University, folks. So welcome to another live episode of I Love Data Fridays. So we're going to call this episode What We've Learned This Year. And I'm just gonna put data up on the screen. There's no agenda behind it or anything. I've just kind of put some stuff up here that I thought was interesting, and then I'll just let your brains turn it over as we go through. All right, so let's just go ahead and talk some data. I'm going to talk about a chart we did that talks about student acceleration. So we're looking at a chart here that is showing the percentage of first-round students, discontinued students, that maintained or gained text level by year end. And these are specifically students, discontinued students who exited at text reading level 12 or higher. And we're looking at the percentage of them who gained or maintained their text reading level by the number of lessons. So the number of lessons is at the bottom. So in general, you can see on the left where we have the least lessons. In general, more students, at times 100% of our students, are maintaining our text level gains the quicker that they get out of reading recovery. And as we move along down to the right of the chart, that percentage drops. So now it's just a little bit. It drops only 2%, so it's not like a huge fall off. But if you have teachers who are pushing back about the whole, I want to keep my whole kids in for 20 weeks, folks, accelerate those kids, and the more that we can accelerate them, the more likely they are to maintain those gains after they leave reading recovery. So, accelerate those kids. All right, next one. Yes, so we did some work. So this is coming from some work we've done with I've done with the Carnegie Foundation, and we found this is a chart showing the number of teachers, and we've got 6 school years up here. Teachers who discontinued 0 students during the school year. So we have the most recent school year on the left-hand side, going back 6 years to the right. The top line is the actual number of teachers by school year, and the bottom percentages represent how much of the total population that those teachers represent. So you can see as we move, if we go back to from right to left, that those teachers are slowly becoming a larger part of the teacher population. I did just a little bit of exploring, and I realized sometimes in some of these scenarios, it is not the teacher's fault. I talked to a teacher leader who described a school in complete chaos where kids were not in class during class time. There was student on teacher violence happening in the school. I mean, it was complete chaos. But they are there, and you can actually look for some of this data yourself in one of our on-demand reports. It's the teachers with a 60% or less discontinuing rate. I think that's the name of it, on-demand report, and those teachers would show up in there. And I believe it also has a 5-year or 3-year average discontinuing rate in there as well. So another interesting piece that came up there. All right, making up a large, okay, ELL students. So we're looking at about 16 years of data, and we're just looking at the number of children who speak English and not English at home. The orange are the English-speaking students, and the purple are our ELL students. And over time, we've become slightly more ELL, about 5% more. So the ELL students are making up a little bit more of our student population. I'm not showing it in a chart here, but in general, we have more students who are speaking complete sentence and isolated phrases. So those are the students in the center of that of the proficiency categories. We're becoming bigger in the center and a little skinnier on the ends. We've had a tiny resurgence of the unable to respond students. So 16 years ago, they made up a 2-3%, and then it actually went away. They went away for a while in the data, and about 3-4 years ago, they've ticked up again. They make up about 1 or 2% of the ELL student population right now. Okay, now this is an interesting one. I like this. This was actually shown, and I'll talk about a little bit about the research in a little bit. This was also shown in some research by Jerry D'Agostino and Emily Rogers, but in general, so we're looking at the fall OS total score over 16 years for reading recovery first round students, which is the bottom blue line, and reading recovery second round students, which is the top orange line. And in general, reading recovery, children are coming to reading recovery more proficient every year. Now you'll notice a little dip at the very end there, so I'm curious once we get all of our data in for this year if that's just a blip or if there's going to be a bit of a downturn, I don't know. In general, now we certainly still have variation. I mean, like this is just the average, and the average hides the variation. So we certainly have a variation in kids, and we still get particularly low kids even right now. This trend also holds true for the random sample. The random sample is coming to first grade more proficient every year. But here's interesting. So in 17-18, our first round students looked like our second round students from 16 years ago. So when someone complains about my kids are way too hard, no, but show them this chart. So no, I don't know what this implies or means. I'm just showing you some data about that. So I'm going to take this one step further here. Same chart. Same data. The first round kids last year, that average was on the total score was a 343, and so 54% of our students in 2002, 2003 were at a 343 or less. Last year, 28% of our students were at a 343 or less. So we still have those students in our data, but here's what's interesting. So in 2002, 2003, those kids at a 343 or less on the left-hand side of the chart, we discontinued. If you look at all children, 22%. If you look at just full program, 25% of those children. Last year, we discontinued 6% of those children, and if you look at full parent program, 7% of children. So that's why I don't know why. I only threw up a couple of, it's just teacher efficacy. Now that they're used to seeing different reading recovery children, when they are presented with a child who is a little more struggling, are they not, knowing what's going on? Someone challenged me on that. Well, I'll just point out Laurel Dickey. She challenged me on that yesterday. That maybe it's change in standards. That maybe we've set the bar is getting higher or something, and it is just harder to get those students a father. So I don't know the reason, but that is what is happening. All right. And in case you're wondering if those students from 2002, 2003 looked different from the 27-18 students, here are their fall OS scores, individual scores. And basically the only difference is they're slightly more proficient in hearing and recording sounds and words, and they have a mildly high, the Ohio word test is, they have a better chance of recognizing one letter or one word on the Ohio word test. But basically, they're the same students. They are the same students. Okay, so now, here's some fun we had this year at IDEC. I participated with a research associate in doing some sort of like informal research on a literacy trend. So that literacy trend that we noticed that kids are coming to first grade more proficient over the last 16 years. So in some previous research, D'Agostino and Rogers showed that both reading recovery and random sample kids have been increasing over time. And they looked at 12 years of data. So with the sort of follow-up that we did, we looked at an additional 4 years. We added on 4 additional years and looked at 16 years. But what they found in their study, when comparing reading recovery and random sample children at the start of first grade, so just the start of first grade, most of the skill gaps were closing. So 4 out of the 6 tasks on the OS, our reading recovery kids were looking more like random sample kids at the start of the school year. And those are the first 4 tasks I've shown there in that table. Writing vocabulary, concepts of properties, hearing, recording sounds of words, and letter ID. They were closing that gap already they were looking more like the random sample kids. But the gap is widening on text reading level and on the Ohio word test. So they are coming in weaker at the start of the year on their text reading skills and their reading vocabulary. So now, the question is, why did that widen? And I don't have the answer for that. But what we wanted to do is like, okay, so we know that most schools have this widening. Can we find schools where we see the opposite on text reading level and the Ohio word test? Can we find where it's closing and what is happening in those schools? So we went through and we did that. So we found in our data, we have 889 schools that had 16 years of continuous data. In there, we had 95 schools where the gap on text reading level and the word test were closing, and then the other 794 were the schools that were widening. And here's what we found. When you compare the closing gaps versus the widening gap schools, the closing gap schools have almost an 8.5% larger discontinuing rate. The closing gap schools have almost a 10% lower incomplete rate. And both discontinued and recommended children at the closing gap schools start reading recovery and finish reading recovery with higher scores on all 6 tasks of the OS. If you look at the effect size at the start of the program, at the end of the program, when you compare the closing and widening gap, our closing gap schools, the effect size are in their favor. They have about a small to medium effect size difference, meaning they are stronger. And when you look for a statistical significance to make sure you're seeing what you're seeing is accurate, you check each task of the OS, including the OS total score, they all come back statistically significant with a very small p-value. Meaning that, yes, these kids are starting and finishing reading recovery stronger in their skills. So, hypothesis, I think, I don't know, we'd have to interview a bunch of teachers and ask, but I think in kindergarten, what we might be seeing are in the closing gap schools are the schools who might be placing a higher priority on actually getting kids into text. That's the hypothesis. I don't have the proof of that. I want to make that clear, but that's the hypothesis behind it. So, all right, and that's the references for that. I want to check some time here. 1 minute and 42 seconds. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is. I got to play the outro music now and everything. Hold on, I got to switch screens. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for once again for attending another episode of I Love Data Fridays. So great to have you here, and hey, we will talk data to you later.